Please bear with us. Maybe at some point you will see my video go off. Don't worry about it. I'm still here. It's just those glitches acting up. Okay.
Okay, I think that that's everybody in the waiting room right now, so we can
Mhm.
get started if you'd like, Pam.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so my name is Pam Brown Lorenzo. I am the Assistant Director for Global Internships and Pre-Law Programs here at the Magna Career Center. I'm also the liaison for the School of Humanities. And I'd like to introduce my assistant today, Jessica. Jessica, if you briefly introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica. I am a business administration and computer science student here at Brooklyn College. I'm in my third year, so I'm a junior, and I'm really excited to be helping Pam out with this event and getting to know you guys a little bit more today.
Okay, and we're going to be starting with our first guest speaker. Um, as you know, the process is that the guest speaker has 20 minutes to basically present, and then at some point we'll do a quick Q&A if you have some questions, and that's how we'll move along. So our first guest speaker is Emily Walkoff. And Emily, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
That's
It's
great.
cool.
That's great. So are you ready to start?
Sure.
Okay.
So it's funny, I've never really presented on my career or my education choices, but I've talked about them a lot. So I'll follow the questions that you kind of prepared. So I
And
appreciate that.
great. And so Emily, the process will be that I will ask the question and then
Okay.
you will respond to that question.
Even easier.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. And Jessica, are we gonna record yet? Okay, great. Okay. So here's the first question, Emily. What factors inspired you to select your current career?
What factors? So I don't know what it is, but my entire life I've always known I want to help people. So I work in a nonprofit. I help fundraise for a mental health nonprofit. So I didn't know I necessarily wanted to raise money, but my mom is a neuropsychologist. So I was basically raised watching her help other people. And that
Mhm.
just became ingrained in me. And I fell in love with it. And I actually got my master's at Brooklyn College in political science, which I've always loved, just the structure of government. And I wanted to help people that way. And then unfortunately, politics is very political. And so I just ended up going to a nonprofit because there I could work with people directly and help them one on one, which is what I love.
Mhm. Great. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Our next question is, what is an example of a project you frequently work on?
This one was a hard one because I don't necessarily have projects where I work per se. So I'm part of the individual giving team. So I guess a project I work with individuals, I help ask them to raise money, and I work with events and whatnot. But projects all the time, I'd have to say I'm the charity manager for our Fountain House team, which
Mhm.
we are running in the United Half Marathon. And so basically we have bibs and people apply to run for us. So overseeing all of the fundraising for that, getting the organization excited to go and support our runners, and then helping the runners fundraise, which is always interesting because it's both on social media and in person. Um, and that's pretty much what I do every day. And then basically meeting with people and having coffee and schmoozing, and then creating a relationship and asking for money.
So it sounds like a lot of multitasking.
It is. There's a lot of
Uh-huh.
every day is something different. It's
Hmm.
not just like the same project over and over again, which is what I love. And we actually work in the clubhouse, is what we call it, so like working with the people we give direct services to. So everyone is involved in everything, which is great. So it's not just me, and it's not just my colleagues. It's everyone helping everyone, which is what I love.
And I guess that leads into the next question. What do you enjoy the most about your career? What is most challenging? What's the other side to it, the challenging side?
Um, I think what I love most is just being able to interact directly with the people. My very first few nonprofits that I worked for, we were removed from people. I started fundraising for NYU. And so we
Mhm.
were in a different building and not at the hospital. And I like to see the people that I help. And, I had a Zoom like this yesterday with one of our members helping her plan, her state plans. And they're so incredibly thankful and grateful that we're there raising money for their programs. And I just love that relationship. That's why I do it, because I feel better when I'm helping someone.
Mhm.
And challenging, I guess. I mean, every nonprofit has its own challenges. It's definitely different than corporate America, but I would say the occasional like bureaucracy and pace. Nonprofit worlds work very slowly, or at least, you know, the ones I have worked are. So sometimes you kind of just have to understand that things take breaks. You know, like you have to put something aside as much as you love it and then work on it later because like the higher ups might not be interested in doing that at the moment. But it's not that it's not important. You just kind of have to, you know, put other things first. And that's the challenging thing because you always want to do what you love and what you want, but sometimes you can't.
Okay. So let's describe the type of person that would be a good fit for your career. If a student was thinking about going in this direction, what kind of a, sort of mix is that? What kind of personality would be good for this type of career?
It depends what in fundraising. So for my actual career path, I think someone who's very open, who's personable and passionate, you know, and you have to like sell the cause that you're working for. Like every time someone applies to work with us, we ask them like, what is your connection to our mission? Like, what do you love about it? And I mean, we hire people that don't have a direct connection to mental health, you know, awareness, but you know that you're more, we feel that they're more passionate about it when you have like a direct correlation to it. Um, Being able to speak and write clearly definitely helps you do a lot of grant writing if that's what people are interested in. And we actually have like, if you are not a big people person, we have prospect research, which is a lot of researching and background checks and just compiling things. And you need to be very thorough with that. A great writer and just being able to jump on your toes because we have one prospect researcher and he has like 10 bosses. So he always has to like a lot of juggling and being able to prioritize.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
yeah, and just it's all about relationship building, I think, in nonprofit work. That's the key, you know, even with your coworkers, you know, because you depend on one another. And
Absolutely.
so,
It's a team approach. Absolutely.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Even like with individual giving, it's not just me, it's me and it's my boss jumping in, and then our big boss, and sometimes even like the CEO jumps in. So it's all about, you know, teamwork. So someone who enjoys that. It's not an independent job.
Would you say, sort of adding on to that, would you say that the team that you work with, that you're sort of in touch with everyone? You know, some people are not in touch with the person way on the top because they're just on the top and you never really get to talk with them. But do you find yourself interacting with anybody or everybody with the part of that team?
Everybody, you know, I can honestly say that this is the most supportive team I've ever worked with.
Hmm.
Even we do a lot on Zoom. We only go into the office once or twice a week, but everyone's welcome to go
Hmm.
whenever they want. And so that's really nice. We always make sure that, like, we have a brand new head of our department. Everyone takes a turn running the meeting each week. And so we huddle on Slack and we use Zoom and we just meet pretty much every day, all day as a
Hmm.
team.
Hmm.
And my boss makes sure that I have opportunities to present to his boss, you know, because that sharpens your skills and that helps you network as well, you know, and add to your credentials. And so and even as charity manager for the races, our second in command is actually the captain of the team. So having that connection with her is really nice.
So
Um,
there's visibility with everybody,
yeah,
basically. That's great. Yeah.
and everyone walks around. You never know who's staff or who's a member. Everyone just kind of works together, which is really wonderful. And you have to also ask for that opportunity. Like not, you know, not only ask to speak to your boss and have evaluations, but to say you want to present to like the C-level staff. You want to like take on more projects and being able to present to perhaps the CEO,
Hmm.
you know, because everyone I think should be given that shot. And our department's pretty good with that.
Great. Okay. Well, next question. What do you know now that you wish you knew earlier? Looking back.
It feels kind of weird to say, but I guess because now I see a lot of kids struggling with it, like the degree choices that you make. Like education is definitely important. My mom was an immigrant. I'm first generation American. Like she was like, you're going to college, and I had to go to grad school. But I don't use political science very often. And I think people stress about that. But I think the whole key is getting an education and learning what you're learning. Like, and the skills that you learn in college, not necessarily the concentration that you have. I
Hmm.
think you can get a lot more from your degree than just, you know, like a history major, if that makes any sense. So that's what I wish I knew back then. I see a lot of, you know, students struggling with what do they major in, and I don't
Hmm.
think it necessarily matters per se. I think it's
Hmm.
just kind of classes that you take and how you approach it, and what you take from them.
Hmm.
So
And the skill set that
Yeah, exactly.
you
And the skill
gain
set.
by being a student. Yeah.
Right. And with the
Mhm,
writing and the organizing and being able
mhm,
to, present and network with teachers and colleagues and, interning is wonderful. It's a lot. You guys do that a lot now. We never
mhm,
really did that when I was a student. That's important.
mhm.
I mean, education is definitely key at the skill set that you learn. It's not necessarily just like, you know, the name of your degree.
Yes.
So
Okay, Emily, thank you so much for sharing that presentation. And again, very important information for students who are thinking of going in this direction. Um, we are going to open it up a few minutes for Q&A. So if any of you students have a question, please put it in the chat and Jessica will ask your question for you. Okay?
I'll also be putting Emily's LinkedIn in the chat for anyone that's interested and wants to connect with Emily.
yeah, I find that LinkedIn has been like a lifesaver. It's actually how I got my first job at NYU in fundraising because I ended up volunteering at NYU, something that I was interested in. I decided I want to volunteer. And then I happened to know someone who worked there because we were volunteering together and she submitted my resume for me. And it like, that's how you get closer. So I feel like LinkedIn is definitely key. Network with people, reach out, go to all the, the BC events.
Absolutely. So any questions, Jessica, we have in the chat?
Not
More
as of
interesting.
yet, but I do have a couple of questions for Emily while we wait for some audience members to ask their own questions. So I
Okay.
know that the field that you're in obviously means that making a difference in the world is something that's really important to you. So from your own personal perspective, what are some of the ways people in your industry or field, or even the people that you work with, are making that difference in this world?
Good question. So we do everything in support of mental health, like community awareness of mental health. And so we are working on advocacy. We have a team that goes to Albany and a team that goes to DC to try to change legislation to get people who have serious mental illness, SMI, more rights, and connecting them to services and helping them get into the workforce because it's just a mental illness. It shouldn't hold anyone back. And I think, when you look at someone who's struggling, um, people think one thing and we're trying to basically change the way that people see them. So
Thank you for that answer. Um, I do have another question for you. So what are some skills or talents you think someone kind of needs to have in order to be able to excel at your job specifically?
um, I think you can't be timid. I think you have to just be like outgoing and personable. Um, you know, the joke at my office is like I like to do kind of we're not competitive. So like I like to do the layup where I reach out to people and I socialize and I get to just chat with them and build a relationship. And then I have a teammate that loves to ask for the money. But like someone who like you have to be personable and you have to be passionate about it. You have to enjoy what you do. So because that comes across to someone, especially since, at least where I work, people who donate have a direct connection to the cause. They have a child who died, bipolar disorder. They have a child who's a member of the organization, or they themselves, we have a lot of donors who have SMI themselves. And it's like they see if you're fake. You have to be true and personable and open with them. And I share my life's experience and my life story with them, and they appreciate that. So I think it helps to build relationships. And you just have to enjoy, going to meet people for coffee, kind of, like that's what you do. You go out, people for coffee, you meet them at their home, which is nice.
Thank you for
And,
that
and,
answer.
and there is a question I see in the chat, right,
Yes,
Jessica?
yes.
Yes?
So Jennifer Ortega just asked, how do you maintain a work-life balance and how many hours do you work on a regular day?
This is also the joke at my office because I never like to take vacation. Work is where I find my peace because my life is very hectic. So I actually like work, but technically it's a 9 to 5-ish when we have events, especially in fundraising. It's a very, very long day. They're like 9 a.m. to, 12 a.m. It's the whole day, but companies tend to make up for that. So like the next day you sleep in, you don't start until like 1 in the afternoon. So events are rare. But it's a 9 to 5, but sometimes it's a little bit after. And it depends too if you're in the office or, you're working from home, you can sneak a load of laundry in during a meeting. But so I mean, at least where I work, it's a lovely balance. That's what we try to prioritize, the balance. There are some places that don't. And so you just have to find a place where you're comfortable, where you fit in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Jessica? Is that in the chat?
In the chat, that was the only question, but I
Oh,
do have another question if Emily's willing to. Actually, we do have another question from Jennifer, so I'll ask hers first. So
okay.
she asked, how can I increase my chances for getting a job like this?
For getting a job in fundraising. I honestly, so I started out, like I said, in like the law and the legal world and the government world, but a lot of those skills did kind of transfer over, the writing well, speaking, being able to engage with people. I think networking helps. I went on informational interviews. I asked people to connect me. I had mentioned shortly before, LinkedIn is like my best friend. I find donors that way. Just you look for a job that you really like. See, do you know anyone at that company? And volunteering helps. I would volunteer. I volunteer at my local library. They have a board that helps to fundraise, and we do book sales and building skills that way.
It sounds like, Emily, you're really passionate about what you do. So,
Yeah,
so how do you keep yourself motivated? Because again, that can be draining as well.
it
How do you keep
can.
yourself motivated?
I think it's because I'm passionate about the cause. Like I've
Mhm,
had some jobs where, at 5 o'clock, I'm like, bye, and I mean, when I worked at NYU, while I loved the work, it just didn't connect with me. And like I said, I was disconnected from the people we were helping. So I didn't see our effect.
mhm,
But I have a deep connection to people who have serious mental illness. It runs in my family. I've
mhm,
known people in hospitals. Like I said, my mother used to take me to state homes when I was a kid for take your daughter to work day, because that's where she used to work.
mhm,
Um, and so it's just something I'm extremely passionate about. And I love when I see someone and I help them. It's like a
mhm,
different feeling when you help someone like one on one
mhm.
and you change their life instead of,
Right,
just writing something. To me,
right.
that's what, you know, is great.
And the success stories, I'm sure, when people come back and sort of tell
Yeah.
you they've been able to change their trajectory and basically, change their lives.
Right. We get people off the street. We have a recharge station for like the homeless population in Times Square, and our members work there. It's free. You grab coffee, and we introduce the programs. We have, in-kind donations where we give coats to people on the street and basically introduce them and get them off. And within, I think it's a year, like 100% of our members are housed. So giving them homes and helping them get work. And it's a social practice model is what we do. So basically, we don't do anything for them. They do everything for themselves, which helps to build self-esteem. So they're the ones who can pay for lunch is $1.50. It's very cheap. It's so that they can pay for their own lunch and that they can say that they've done something.
Mm-hmm.
And we help them get work. And like we actually have a store downtown and we help them kind of get back into the workforce and how do you work a cash register? How do you create products? How do and we teach them skills. And then they're rock stars. So
I
Any
do
other
have
questions,
I do
Jessica?
have one last question. I'm kind of
Mhm,
just going to pivot off of what you actually said, Pam, because you
mhm.
did point out that Emily seems very passionate about this. But Emily, as I'm sure you know, a lot of college students are kind of struggling to find that passion. So what are some tips that you can possibly give for people that, are an undergrad, aren't really sure what they're passionate about? How did you get to know what you actually love to do?
I mean, for some reason, I was born knowing that I wanted to work for a nonprofit. I just wanted to help people. But I think it's you kind of just start at the bottom. It's like, what do you like to do? I had a friend who, she ended up leaving our job maybe a year and a half ago because she got bored. Like she wanted, and she took a job where she went from like organization to organization. She walked, different places throughout the day because that made her happy. I could never do that. That would make me miserable going from like different offices every day. You just kind of find what you like to do. And I think, and then eventually, you find the right spot for you, but you have to find somewhere that makes you happy and and I think that's where the passion comes from. I think that's like volunteering and interning. I mean, hell, if you like video games, right, there's careers in that. So yeah,
So I
Thank you so
think the
much.
opportunity for students working with the Magnet Center, again, is doing internships. You're trying on things, and
right.
that's where you learn about yourself. And so Emily's basically telling you, get involved in that, get involved in doing internships so that you can learn what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and what are the things that interest you. And basically, that will work as a guide in getting you to the next level.
And then you help build skills and you help network every person you meet, even like your college professors, ask them to connect on LinkedIn and and just be like, hi, I met you at some everywhere you go, get a business card. Do you mind if I have an informational interview so I can just ask you about what you do for a living and or shadow you for a day? things like that. Yeah, you build skill sets that way, you make a network that way. But yeah, I wish we had interns. I think I had one internship in college. It just wasn't a thing. So I think that, the Career Center is wonderful. The things you guys offer are great.
Okay, so any other question before we basically bring it to a close with Emily Walkoff?
We do have one last question in the chat. Jean, sorry, asked, why do I need experiences for internships or with internships?
I think it's skill building. Education's important, but you don't get the skills that you need. I think, you have to be in the workforce, see how the office operates and just gain that experience. I mean, everything from answering phones to filing to, things that you don't do in a school environment, I think definitely help. Also helps with your people skills, and figuring out what you love to do.
And believe it or not, guys, it's also stepping out of your comfort zone. So
That's
that too,
You should always
will help.
challenge yourself, right?
Mhm.
Like it's funny, I actually get very anxious and nervous talking to strangers, but I work in fundraising. So, because I love what I do. But yeah, you have to get out of your comfort zone, try something different. I always say if it scares you, do it.
Hmm.
I think that's
Okay.
really good advice.
It's worth it, right? Yeah. You're
Yeah.
scared for a reason. Just jump in. Who cares? What I love about my job, we throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Give it a try. If you fail, who cares? You tried it, So
So
what's the
Emily,
worst
just
thing?
give us your full name again and your employer and basically, title,
Sure.
just to close it up.
So Emily Walkoff, I work for Fountain House. And so I'm the manager of individual giving, but technically now I think it's the manager of our mid-level giving program. That's so, and we are on the mid Hell's Kitchen area of Manhattan, and we have a clubhouse in the Bronx, and we're just building one now in Los Angeles because there's a need there.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily, for
Thank
giving
you,
your
Emily.
time today. We know you're
Thank
busy, but thank you so much. We
Carter, thank you
appreciate
for
it.
having me. Feel free to
Okay,
reach out if you have questions or connect with me on LinkedIn.
will do. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Okay, so we do have another speaker lined up, a BC alum. Her name is Olivia Higgins. Olivia,
Hello.
hi.
Hi.
So if you just want to introduce yourself and then we can move into the questions.
Yeah, so my name is Olivia Higgins. I currently work at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and I am a HR operations assistant.
Jessica, you're going to take the questions this time?
I'll be taking over the questions.
Okay.
So my first question for you, Olivia, is what factors inspired you to select your current career?
So everyone that's in HR talks about they didn't happen to be in HR. They didn't plan to be in HR. And that was kind of my thing. I didn't really plan to be in HR, but during COVID, I knew that the part of fashion that I was doing was a little bit limited, and I wanted to really help more, and I wanted to make a change. Again, the world was a different place during 2020. So I took that time to research about other places or other departments that would be a best suiting for me. And I landed in HR. And HR is very big. So you have talent acquisition recruiting, you have campus recruiting, and then you have legal, finance, and other departments. And I felt that talent acquisition, which is a recruiting aspect, was a department that I really saw a good fitting in terms of my skill sets and my background. And I just kind of took it from there. I started researching and looking at different places that I would consider home in terms of company. And I actually went viral on LinkedIn. This was back December 2021. And I was going through a lot of interviews, a lot of process, and I just wanted to get my foot into HR, and it just wasn't working. So I ran to LinkedIn, but not really. And that landed me with a lot of opportunities to start networking with people in HR. And I was interviewed by my current company, and I actually didn't get the job. So when they interviewed me, they said that they were going with other candidates. And I just, continued my search. And later down the line, maybe a couple of months, they reached back out to me. So I first started off as a talent acquisition specialist. So I was recruiting for clinical research roles, entry and mid-level. And then I moved over to the operations team. So that was kind of my journey into my current role. Still very exciting, and I'm still learning a lot of things today.
Wow.
Thank you, Olivia.
You're welcome.
So would you say that in HR, generally just HR jobs, you would say that networking is one of the key aspects to kind of landing a role from your own personal experience?
Yes, I would definitely say, especially to Emily's point, networking on LinkedIn, networking with your peers, just because you don't really know who is who until you have a conversation. And in HR, because there's so many different departments, a lot of people think that HR is just hiring and firing, which we do that, but there's more to it than just that. And letting your manager or your leadership know what your interests are, so if there's any possible way of you maybe doing a stretch assignment, right? And then if there's a possible open opportunity later down in the line, you can, let your manager know I did this stretch assignment and this team said that I was, would be a great fit for this opening. So just speaking to others and letting them know what you're interested in and kind of working from there, and then just speaking to others about their journeys. I think it'll probably spark an interest in you saying, I never really thought about that until you mentioned it.
Thank you. I 100% agree. I think that like a lot of times you learn a little bit more about yourself when you talk to other people about their own experiences. But going into my second question, what is an example of a project that you frequently work on?
So currently I do the onboarding. I assist with the onboarding process for the hospital. So for all of the permanent new hires, I do the I-9 process. So making sure that those new hires are eligible to work in the US. And then if they're US citizens or if they are on a visa, I would, just make sure that all of the documentation is correct, making sure that they're bringing all of their certifications, their licenses for their particular role. But that is kind of what my day-to-day looks like. Outside of that, I am also the the executive assistant for the VP of HR operations. So I manage her calendar, just making sure that she's on top of her meetings and making sure that everything is in place for her day to day.
Thank you. And kind of going into that question a little bit more, would you say that you have a happy work-life balance in this position?
Yes. So believe it or not, when COVID happened, everyone was working from home. Of course, there were some people that had to go in, which was normally the health care workers. Now, I actually did not like working from home. I'm a people's person. I love being around people. I just love like feeling the energies of others and making people smile. So when this opportunity presented itself, I started working remotely, and then they told me that I had to go into the office. And I said, great, as long as I can come home one day a week. Just because the culture shock of being at home all the time and then now going into the city, going on the bus, going on the train, that can be overwhelming. So to me, that's my work-life balance in terms of being hybrid. So I am a couple times in the office and then I am home a couple times during the week. So that really helps me to have like a clear head. I'm not, traveling, especially now with the snow. So that kind of does help as well.
Thank you. My next question is, what do you enjoy the most about your career, and also what is the most challenging?
So what I enjoy most about my career currently is at the hospital, since it's a cancer center research hospital. There's so much going on now with cancer research, learning new things, and just seeing the vision that the current president has for the organization. So just learning more about different type of researches that they're doing, findings that they're having, and then ultimate solutions, for the type of cancers that you know, a lot of people are experiencing. And then when there are workshops at my company, I like to be involved, right? So sometimes we have this thing called lunch and learn, where it doesn't matter what level you are, whether it's entry level or executive level, it's a lunch and learn. You register and you sign up, and it's during lunchtime, or a supposed lunchtime. But you go in and you learn something new. So I've learned how to use Microsoft Teams. I've learned how to use Smart Sheets. I've learned different applications that I've never used before up until now. And it's really great in that sense. So I'm always learning. I'm always learning about new things, especially when it comes to softwares, and then learning a lot about what's going on with cancer and, you know, how they're trying to make things better for the community.
Thank you. My next question is, describe the type of person that's typically a good fit for your career.
So someone that is very detail oriented, someone who is not afraid to speak up, someone who is able to teach others, just because in my role, some of the new hires may not, you know English language, and that may not be their first language. And, you know, going through the onboarding process, they may need a lot of help. So kind of helping them and guiding them through the process. When they have their appointments coming in, I just make sure that I'm teaching them and giving them grace, just because, you know, it's their first time, this could be their first job. So just someone who is also patient. I'm a very patient person. So I think those are some of the qualities. And then also speaking up in terms of change, you know, trying to, you know, evolve and make things a little bit more efficient and better within the role. But I think those are some of the qualities that I would say someone going into this type of role should have.
Speaking of qualities, are there any qualities that you've earned through your time working in this position?
I would say not being afraid to learn new applications. So with my old role, working in fashion, I worked with like Salesforce. And now I don't work with Salesforce, but I work with Workday and ServiceNow. So ServiceNow is a platform that some companies use, but they use it for different things. And within HR, it was very challenging at first, so to speak, just because I didn't know how to use it, and it looks very complicated. But over time, being in my role, I've learned to love ServiceNow, believe it or not. And it definitely, I've found different features and new things that I share with my colleagues that either they didn't know about or they're happy that I shared it with them in terms of like my findings. So I would definitely say like learning new applications really did help me when it came to my technical skills in this role.
Thank you. And we have one last question before we kind of open the floor to open Q&A from the chat. The last question is, what do you know now that you wish you knew earlier?
That I would say not being afraid. So a long time ago, well, it's not really that long ago, but I graduated Brooklyn College in 2016, and I actually wanted to be a nurse. So I thought I was never going to get into healthcare just because I didn't go to nursing school and I didn't go into the traditional route. And I applied to so many hospitals, but never got in. I actually applied to my hospital and never got in. And then, you know, fast forwarding now to a couple of years later, I'm working at the hospital. So just knowing that your time will come. Sometimes you have to be a little bit patient, and sometimes you have to prepare yourself. And I think I have been prepared over the years during my different roles that I've had in the past to what I'm doing now to, you know, speak to people who may be going through a tough time. During the time when I was recruiting in my career at the hospital, a lot of people told me that the reason why they chose the hospital was because either their family member had cancer or they had cancer themselves, right? You know, hearing people say that, sometimes you can get a little shaken up because it is sad. But reassuring people that, you know, if this is the path that they want to go on, that I'll support them, and just having a listening ear. So I think those are kind of some of the things that I wish that I knew that, it'll come, it'll take some time, but it'll come.
Thank you so much, Olivia. So right now we're just going to start the Q&A portion of the sorry, not interview, but
Yeah.
I'm just like kind of used to sitting in like this position for that. But um, anyone is welcome to type their questions in the chat while we do wait for the questions to come in. I do have a couple of questions that I would personally like to ask you myself as well. So,
Sure.
considering that you mentioned you had your own little struggle with determining your career and like what you really wanted to do when COVID came around, what advice would you give for a student that's kind of unsure of their major or future career path, or if they're even split between two?
I would say, again, to Emily's point, talking to a lot of people, right? LinkedIn is also my best friend. I am always on LinkedIn. If you follow me on LinkedIn or connected with me on LinkedIn, I'm always talking about things for students because I am like I am the student speaker. I love speaking about certain opportunities for students, and networking and speaking to people is really important because like I said before, you just never know something about yourself until you speak to someone else, right? Having that conversation, I think it's really important. My background, well, my degree is in children and youth studies. So when I was working in fashion, so when I left Brooklyn College, I worked in retail for quite some time, and then I went into luxury fashion and I went into corporate. And you would say like children and youth studies, fashion, that doesn't really align. Sometimes your degree may not align, right? Sometimes you may just meet someone or meet a lot of people and having a lot of conversations and, telling them what you're interested about or, asking them about their journey. I think it's really important because then you'll say, oh my gosh, I met with Jessica today and she said something that really stuck with me. I want to do more research. Or I met with Pamela today and I think I may want to go down her career trajectory, but I don't really know how to get started. Maybe I should ask her. I think that is really important because, wanting to be a nurse and then going into fashion and then now circling back into HR, you can say like, oh, she didn't know what she was doing. And to be honest, I didn't. I didn't know, but I, went with a lot of feedback that people gave me, showing that Olivia, you're attentive, you're really organized, and we can count on you, extremely reliable, and you're always on top of your game. And then just seeing what type of careers best work with your skills.
Yeah, I think your skills took the lead, actually. That's really what sort of maneuvered you in the direction that you got it, that you went into.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. And I
Thank
guess
you.
one question I just want to throw out real quick is what motivates you, Olivia? I mean, because I mean, even with the issue of cancer, and I know Emily was talking about, mental illness. Like, what motivates you in what you do, and based on those kind of issues?
Yeah, so actually, when I was at Brooklyn College during that time, my mom was going through her last surgery for breast cancer. So it's really, really close to home. And I think that's what kind of motivates me because I see my mom every day and she's so strong, right? And she is resilient. She overcame that. And being at Brooklyn College, it was a lot. Like it was a lot for me, but I saw that my mom had so much strength. So that's what kind of motivates me every day. Even just seeing her now, just over the years, it's been more than 10 years since she's been cancer free. So just seeing her, just like, hey mom, that's what kind of like motivates me on a day to day. And then even when I see people in the hospital, in the hallways, I say a prayer and hoping that they will get out of that situation and they'll be resilient to tell their story. So that's what kind of motivates me every day.
Thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Also, there is another question from Jennifer in the chat. She asks, how do you deal with and deliver negative feedback? Because of course that is a part of your job.
Yes, so with HR operations, specifically in my role, there are times when people come in and they may not have the right documentation. So I just let them know, hey, so you don't have the right documentation. However, you do have an opportunity to come back later today. If not, I can partner you with your coordinator and we can work something out. I always give someone an opportunity to come back later on in the day, or to figure out how they can come back. Sometimes people have, they have other lives, they have schedules, they may have children, or they may have a lot going on. And I don't want them coming to their appointment and then missing their documentations, being like the worst of their day. Just letting them know that, hey, it's okay. You can come back. If not, we're happy to work out something for you. And, they always say, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And they always say sorry like a million times, but it's okay. It happens.
Thank you. And there's also another question in the chat. This will be our last question for your session. So do you use any strategies or out of office activities to build a kind of a great company culture? Is there kind of like an outside work life that you share with your coworkers? And if not, do you think it's important to establish that?
So it's so crazy that you're asking me this, because my coworker, she actually just came back. She was out on leave, and I really missed her. I really missed her a lot. I sent her a lot of text messages wishing her well, just because she had, some family things going on. And I wanted to give her that space. But when she came back, so we've actually never hung out outside of work. We always have conversations at work and we're always connecting, but I know she's also busy. And when she came back, I gave her like a big hug. That was my first time ever hugging her, and I've known her for over a year. So we both needed that hug, because she was dearly missed. But I told her, I'm like, hey, once the snow goes away, we need to go out after work, just to, just have food. I love to eat, and just have a good time. But she's the only person that I see in person. A lot of the other HR people within my department, they work from home. So I don't see them in person, but sometimes I will say, hey, can I hop on a quick call and we'll just catch up? How was your weekend, or did you do anything fun? Earlier in my role, my grandfather had passed away, and all of my team members like sent me cards. They were very supportive, and they, checked up on me and reached out and asked me if I needed anything. And I think that's what really helps in terms of your day-to-day, having people that are supportive. But she's the only person that I see in person, just because a lot of people in HR, they do not work on site. So hopefully I answered your question.
Thank you. You did.
No
And to wrap up your session, can you please just kind of restate your name, your position, and anything else that you would like us to know about you?
So again, my name is Olivia Higgins. I'm a HR operations assistant at Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital. And that's it, I guess.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have our next BC alum, Justin Friedman. Justin, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Okay, good. So we're going to have you get started, introduce yourself first, and then we can go into the questions, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
So my name is Justin Freeman. Pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Director of Community Affairs for New York State Assembly Member Farris Houffront Forest, which is Assembly District 57, which includes Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, portions of Crown Heights, and Bed-Stuy. I'm into my 4th year here. I'm a veteran, a father, organizer, and happy to talk with and have students learn about what it's like to be out in the world after getting your degree.
Great. Okay. So, first question. What factors inspired you to select your current career, Justin?
So my career is based a lot around like service, right? And connecting with people. And when I was a kid, I used to try to stand up to bullies, or I would always like try to help someone out that's taking a test. Or, my mom, she had albinism. She has albinism, which is a condition that affects the way, your melanin. So she's black, but she presents as a white person, I guess you would say. And that created a lot of like a big sense of like empathy within me to like meet people where they are, understand that people have certain conditions and things like that. So all of those things like created a sense of empathy within me, and I wanted to act on that through compassion, um, by helping people in any way that I can. And so I joined the military kind of as a result of that. I had a pretty long career there. I went to school, and while I was at LaGuardia Community College, I had a professor, a philosophy professor, that told me I should go into philosophy. So after I graduated from LaGuardia, I went to Brooklyn College, started philosophy. It was the perfect degree choice for me. But I also did political science. I got a degree in actually in LaGuardia in political science as well. So those two mix up really well to give you kind of like an understanding of the world, how politics works, but also like how to talk to people and relate to people and learn from folks' experiences. And so yeah, that got me into thinking like, how can I not only learn from people's experiences, but like change their quality of life once I know that they're impacted in some sort of way, right? So that's when I started figuring out, okay, I can intern at an assembly member's office where they do service-oriented work for people in the district. And that's how I got here.
Okay. It sounds like, Justin, you were doing a lot of relationship building throughout your experience as well. Like you said, you spoke with a faculty member, and the faculty member gave you some advice. And we're always encouraging students to build those relationships, with faculty members because they can be a great resource as far as giving career advice as well.
Definitely. I mean, just the other day, I was talking to that philosophy professor from LaGuardia Community College, asking about like what are other opportunities that I can offer at that school to talk with students. But then building out that network also like opens you up for like potential jobs, internships, fellowships, and just experience in general that makes you a more well-rounded individual.
Great, thank you. Next question. What is an example of a project you frequently work on?
So in this office, I think something unique about our office, we have a project called district organizing. And with that, when our assembly member first got into office, it was deep COVID. And we're also in the Shirley Chisholm building across the street from Atlantic Center. So we don't have a storefront, you know what I mean? Like other
Yeah.
electeds do.
Okay.
So we were like, well, we got to figure out to get in touch with people. And so we do outreach from our office. We do two different kinds, canvassing and phone banking. And so from that, we'll canvass like areas that are we'll canvass like rent stabilized buildings or NYCHA buildings with the help of of their tenant association. So we're not just like barging in. And we'll get constituent cases from that, right? Constituent cases are like issues that people have interfacing with city or state agencies, like getting public benefits, unemployment. A lot of people have issues getting unemployment benefits, delays there, issues like repairs in their buildings, things like that. We'll take those cases, bring them to the office. We have a team of volunteers then that pick up those cases. And with that, they're learning how to interact with their neighbors, essentially, right? And learning what the issues are. And then from learning what the issues are, they get institutional knowledge, how to interface with those agencies. And then from there, we're thinking about these are the issues. How do we create legislative change out of that? Um, so the project is like this multi-dimensional way of looking at a person that comes to the office or people that we reach out to as sites of organizing, people to develop as volunteers, and also just working with their own particular issue.
It's great. So it's almost like the community is sort of your laboratory where you gather what you need to sort of like create maybe policies that would support the needs or some of the things that are sort of like happening in the community where people need help.
Yes, yes. So we, as our laboratory, right? Because folks are coming to us with the issues. We're just trying to figure out, yeah, like how to help them. We have
Mm-hmm.
the tools, but we're the venue as well, right? So if they want to do events with us, they can. We do legislative town halls to kind of like get a sense to talk to people about what the assembly members' like legislative priorities are, but also what are the issues that folks reached out to us about the most that ended up being a legislative priority that we're going to push for in Albany.
Wonderful. Okay. And what do you enjoy most about this career that you're into? What do you enjoy most?
I think experience sharing. You know, a lot of folks have mental health issues or like the problems that they're facing can exacerbate their mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a society where people are highly individualized, and that also exacerbates mental health issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just by speaking to a person about a common issue, a common interest, it can like allay some of those, I feel like deal with some of those issues. Um, and so I really love to like see a light bulb moment when between two people that have the same issue and they realize that they have the same issue and they're not that much different because they share that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I do a lot of one of the kind of organizing that we do is tenant organizing from the different kinds of outreach that we do. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll go to a rent stabilized building, we'll knock on the door, we'll see if they have a bunch of issues in there. We'll try to see if we can get an initial meeting. In that initial meeting, folks would be like, "Oh, I have roaches in my apartment, for example. Did you have roaches? Do you have roaches in your apartment too?" And and not only that, but I think in a rent stabilized apartment, they're paying less rent, and in a market rate apartment, they're paying $1,000 more, but they have the same exact issue.
Wow.
So you got
Interesting.
people, right, that are like, I don't like that feel like those people that are paying $1,000 don't know my struggle. And it's not to say that they're like exactly the same,
Mm-hmm.
but these are points of commonality that like society, I feel like kind of sort of at large tries to make us tries to keep us blind from,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think our work here is to one of the things that we want to do is try to elucidate, try to show people that, and that's what makes me happy or hype about what I do, experience sharing and light bulb moments.
Mm-hmm. And so if you were to describe a type of person or individual that would be a good fit for this career, what would you say?
I think curiosity, right?
Mm,
Curiosity is huge. Like, you have to be able to ask the right questions. And you have to be able to do that from a sense of empathy, right? A genuine empathy, so that the person can see that you're like actively listening, truly engage with them to try to understand what their problem is. Um, so, and then also curiosity helps you think about right, like how to think outside of the box to solve a problem, but also teaches you can be a way to like help you figure out like what are different kinds of outreach events that we can do? What are different ways that we can connect with constituents? How do we interact with community-based organizations in different ways to uh, engender organizing between like community-based organizations around like the same issue?
mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, if you stop asking questions, I think for most jobs, it's probably not the right job for you, and you don't have enough passion for that specific field if you're not asking
Mm-hmm.
questions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Justin, based on what you do, I mean, you really are like face to face with a lot of the clients, the neighbors, right, in the community. So having a certain what would say strength about in you that sort of helps you do that job because that's not easy. you know,
Yeah.
because you have to get past people's emotions and maybe what they're,
Hmm.
they're this, the things that they're not happy about to gather
Yeah.
what you need to take back to the office.
Yeah, I think it takes a certain sense of patience. I think patience is developed over time for sure. And that's why it's
Hmm.
important, for people to get out in the world and like figure out what they want to do, interact with people. So like for me, like I think upbringing can also like develop patience within you. So like I'm from Flatbush. There's a lot of black people, but we're multicultural. You know what I mean? And like
Hmm.
we talk to each other in different ways, different tones. We can be loud, right? But not be angry.
Hmm.
We can cry, but not be sad.
Hmm.
And so knowing how to work with people through those different emotions and learning to be patient, with people, I think is a really big aspect, especially when you understand that people are going through so much, right? Housing is crazy right now. The rent is so high. It's so cold outside, and there's so many people that maybe don't have cold heat or hot water.
Hmm.
I generally meet with people that kind of sort of have wry humor about that situation, right? As a way to help them get over that.
Hmm.
It's sad, but it's also understandable. And you have to have a certain like experience level and patience to be able to deal with that. But I think we all come with like a certain lived experience, right? That our parents, we've seen our parents go through it, we've seen our friends go through it, and their parents and ourselves, we've been through it. So we all got it. We just have to realize it, sit down with somebody and be like, these are the skills that I have. How do they fit into what I want to do?
Hmm. And just sort of I guess, elaborating on that a little bit more. With the experience that you've had, the experiences that you've had, Justin, you can honestly say you own what you know. And what would that be in your opinion?
I own can you clarify that question
Like
a
for
little
instance,
bit?
your skill set, the skill set
Hmm.
that you've acquired, your knowledge base.
Hmm.
I mean, I think
Right.
oftentimes we want students to understand as you go along, you're going to own what you know, and you have to be able to sort of like
Yeah.
articulate that. So if you were to do that, what would you say?
I mean, own what I know. I mean, I know that I want to share what I know. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
really, I mean, when I think about like ideas that I have around what I want to do in the office and the knowledge that I attained like throughout life, yes, I own that information. My faculties like help me fashion that information right into like different perspectives and things like that. But what's also like really important is to share that information with once you have like fashioned it through your experiences. Because the knowledge also comes with a sense of experience attached to it, right? There's like a sample, there's like a piece of you that comes with the information that you own and that you choose to share.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's what I would say about it, to be short.
Okay.
I
That
have a
makes
question
sense.
for you, Justin.
Mhm.
So with the stuff that you do, obviously you're kind of face to face with the people who might come and complain to you about their problems, about their life. It's not easy to deal with, I can imagine. So I'm just curious, has there ever been a point where it's kind of been emotionally too much to deal with? Like personally, have you ever thought that?
I think yeah, there's this thing that's called the vicarious trauma. This idea that you're taking on people's trauma, their issues. I think it's really important for people to get therapy through this job, and for any job that they do, right? But then also to be mindful of how much they're working and to be in contact with their supervisor about how much they're working. To be real, you can feel like, right, I love my job and my job is my life. But you have to ask yourself, really, is that what you want out of life? Because there's so much more out of life. And a lot of people that talk that way potentially. I used to be that one. I used to be that person. Could be masking like they could be masking things underneath, right? That they haven't fully addressed. So it's really important to have a good relationship with work and life and relationships, outside work relationships. It's also really healthy to seek therapy, to talk to that person about what's happening at work. But then one last thing about that, also talk to your colleagues about what's happening at work. You don't have to deal with problems on your own. Never like feel like I can do this on my own, or I have a question, but I don't want to look bad if I ask this question about how I feel. Reach out to your colleagues. You're in school, reach out to your classmates and your professor if because things might be tough for you when finals come up and stuff like that, and you're withholding a lot of things. Let it out.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
The
So
last question, Justin, is what do you know now that you wish you knew earlier? So just to sum it up.
I wish I went to school earlier. I wish I went to college earlier. I dropped out of high school, and then I got my GED, and then I joined the military. And I had a bunch of friends while I was in when I was in the military, being like, why don't you get your degree now because it'll be free while you're in and use your GI Bill when you're out. But I was, I loved my job, right? I loved going out and having fun. And that's fine. But, you know, I learned so much going to like going through CUNY.
Mhm.
Like it's such a good institution if
Mhm.
you use it the right way, if
Right.
you work with people there the
Right.
right way. So LaGuardia was a great experience for me.
Mhm.
Even though it's in Long Island City and it's not the greatest looking campus, great professors, right? Great
Wonderful.
students. Brooklyn College, I got so many good like internships and things like that out of Brooklyn College. Like a part of me wish I would have done that earlier,
Mhm.
but maybe it's good that I have had like life experiences and I'm a non-traditional student and it
Mhm.
helped like make me a better student now than I would have been back then.
Right.
So, there's give and take to everyone to these kinds of questions about what would you do, what
Differently.
would you do different?
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much, Justin. Now we're going to open up the floor to a few questions, okay?
Mhm.
I'll also be sharing Justin's LinkedIn in the chat for anyone that is, wanting to connect with you, Justin.
Not all at once now. Okay.
All right, so Tayana asks, how did you leverage the resources at the school, and how did they help you?
Yeah, great question. So, I actually had professors come to me the first time with information about resources. That's how I got my internship from LaGuardia to work at New York State Assembly. So that was a great help into figuring out like, okay, there are resources out here. But then also another thing was thinking about like how I can organize students and then like get resources from the school and from student life like to to help me with organizing students, right? So like I had a political I ran a political science club at LaGuardia, and for our meetings they would give us money for pizza and space in the school to like have to do movies for like political movie films and things like that. Um and you know, when I did reach out to professors explicitly, like they did point me towards resources. So it's I think it's like working with students to help students get more resources and then working with professors to point you in the right direction for those resources.
Mhm. Any other questions, Jessica?
I'm not seeing any other questions. Actually, I take that back. I just got a question from Khadijah. She says, what is the most overwhelming and or stressful part of being a community director?
Hmm. I think on a somber note, like stuff happens out there. As being a community director, like we have to work with community-based organizations, the police, and things like that. And someone got shot on the way to Franklin Avenue recently. And so we're having an event to kind of talk about that and address that at the station. And that makes me feel terrible. It was a Black man, not that much younger than myself. And so I think the vicarious trauma that you can experience is the toughest part of this job, but it also has a driving factor to want to like create change around that. So look at that as like, I don't want to call it like a double-edged sword or something like that.
So to kind of wrap it up, would you mind just, restating your title, your name, and what you'd like to do? Yeah. Anything else that
Yeah,
you'd like
my
us to know?
name is Justin Freeman. Pronouns are he, him. I'm the director for community affairs for Assembly Member Barris Souffrant Forrest. It was a pleasure answering questions, your questions and the students' questions, and hope you guys have a great time in school.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you so
Thank you so
much for being with
much.
us today,
All right, take
presenting.
care.
Okay. Okay, we have as our next speaker, BC alum, Julio Pena III. Welcome. How are you, Julio? Can't hear you.
How about now?
Oh, yes, we got you.
There we
got
go.
you.
Hi. Good
Okay.
afternoon, everyone.
Okay. So Jessica's actually going to be doing the questions this time around. So
Yes.
Jessica,
All right.
whenever you're
So we
ready.
can just jump right in. Our first question is, what factors inspired you to select your current career?
Sure. Again, my name is Julio Peña III. My pronouns are he, him, or they. Uh, for me, what really solidified my, I guess, choice in career was my very first job in the Summer Youth Employment Program when I was 15 years old. I worked in a summer camp and really loved it and realized that, I kind of wanted to spend the next, I guess, my career in working in nonprofit, working with young people. Um, and uh, One thing of note when I was in college and I started working full time was and participating in like community programs in my neighborhood and like being involved locally was a program that I had benefited from when I was a teenager. Um, it was like a stipend program for students, and we were able to kind of earn a small stipend for participating and working or volunteering in the program. And that program, as an adult, being able to work with it as well and kind of guide that work was pretty really meaningful for me because it was a small stipend, but it helped me in high school. Um, and kind of continuing that work for me is meaningful. And so I continued doing nonprofit. I worked with high school students for a while, and now kind of back where I started supporting after school programs. I think they're much needed. They're safe havens for young people, um, and really are kind of like beacons and community centers, places where people can really be engaged and do really good work.
Thank you. The next question is, what is an example of a project that you frequently work on?
So my title is I'm a senior division coordinator and I have a portfolio of programs. So essentially I do a lot of the back end things for those programs like hiring, onboarding, budgeting, payroll, ordering, finances, on-site support. And one thing that I tend to do really often is onboard new staff for our program. So reviewing resumes, setting and scheduling interviews. Once candidates are hired, kind of working with them one-on-one to kind of do the onboarding process. Working in after school, um, very regulated by the state and city. So there's a lot of minute steps that need to be completed in order to be eligible to work. So really guiding applicants in that process so that they understand the full scope of it, and really kind of make sure they know all the steps and are completing all the benchmarks so that they can be clear to work and, be able to interact with young people. So really managing the onboarding of staff from recruitment to clearance is kind of what I do regularly.
Can you maybe talk about whether you kind of transitioned in roles at the company? Because now you seem like you have a lot on your kind of like a lot of tasks that you deal with. So I know that you're speaking to a lot of students who are kind of looking for internships and stuff. So just any kind of general advice that you would want to maybe give.
Sure. I had started with my organization, Good Shepherd Services, which right there. When fresh out of college, and started as a counselor in a program, and over the years, kind of worked my way up to an internship coordinator, managing internships for our students, and then I was a program director of that program for a while. And unfortunately, we lost a contract, so I now am working with our after school portfolio. But I've been here for 15 years, and I've had I think at this point 5 different jobs. Um, and I think one of the things that really stood out, it just in things that I do, well, one, like I love, I'm like ride or die Brooklyn College, like I tell that to everybody. But it's also because of like the different opportunities you're able to participate in and to take advantage of. Like when I was in grad school, I went back to Brooklyn College to like get support on like resumes and stuff and thinking about like what other careers and like, I was able to do that at my grad school, but like I wanted to go back to Brooklyn College and trust the supports that had there. And for me, really taking advantage of all of the different opportunities um, everywhere, whether that's like in my work setting or in school setting, so that I can be the best prepared to for like whatever I want to do next.
Thank you. So the next question is, what do you enjoy the most about your career and what is also the most challenging?
I think what I love, what I enjoy most is working in a school setting. Like your days are very different. Like there are things that I do regularly, but on any given day, I can be start my morning in my office, like helping a candidate in the onboarding process, and then by the end of the day, I'm at that after school program, helping because they're short staffed or like helping taking attendance. And I think that um, non-monotonous schedule, I think makes it interesting. But I'm also going to say that also makes it really challenging because right now I have a portfolio of programs in the Bronx, and I live in Brooklyn. And it can be very challenging when it's like, you have to drop everything and commute to the Bronx to support programming, um, is the challenge of like, they're two boroughs that have like similar programming, but they're very far apart. And for me, the commuting is the real challenge of like, I want to be present and able to support, but it's also hard to do that when the program is an hour and a half away.
Thank you. The next question is, describe the type of person that is typically a good fit for your career.
I think when we talk about like skills that are strengths in this field, I often think about like good, strong, transferable skills. So things like being a good communicator, being able to work in teams and independently, particularly when you're working in after schools and programs, like you're working with a bunch of people. One of our programs is 22 staff, and being able to work and interact with different personalities is like a huge strength. Um, and because it's also a heavily regulated field in terms of like the city and state regulations, like you have to pay attention to some of the small details. Like if you didn't check off when a student was here, that doesn't get entered into the database, which affects your like your overall score. So being able to really manage the small details and minutia to support the program. But definitely also I think um, a willingness and an ability to be creative. Like if you're working with kids, like you have to be consistent and you have to be super creative because once you lose their attention, like things kind of go a little AWOL.
Just out of curiosity, Can you maybe go over in like a shorter way some of the regulations in case that there's anybody that's interested in going down this career path, just kind of giving them like a little bit of a heads up of what they might be getting themselves into?
Yeah. So for most of the city-funded after-school programs, they're regulated by the state. It's called SAC, SACC, the School Age Childcare regs, and it's a huge document. And essentially, you have to be cleared by the Department of Health, and that means you have to get a physical completed. You have to complete some background checks with the city and state. You also have to be, if it's a program in a school building, you need to be fingerprinted by the Department of Education. You have to complete this like really frustrating 8-page or 9-page packet that has all of a lot of the same information. You just have to put it down in different places. Um, and if you are a group leader or a supervisor, you have to have a certain number of trainings per 2 years in different fields, so like health and nutrition, safety procedures, administrative procedures. So it's like there's different regulation, different trainings you have to complete to qualify to maintain your um, ability to work in an after-school program.
Thank you. So our next question is, what do you know now that you wish that you knew earlier?
I think as I said, I've had a couple of different roles in this organization, and I feel like for me, I always felt and was kind of taught that like when you're working in a field, you have to have a very specific skill set, a very specific education, and I think that limited me because I kind of like stuck in that mindset where it's like, well, I've done this, so I can only really do this kind of career. And I think as I've gotten older, really highlighting as I talk with other folks about like transferable skills is that goes for everyone. Like being able to identify the skills that I have so that I can market it in different settings, whether that is in nonprofit or for profit. Whether that is a community-based organization or a government organization, is that like the skills that I've built in my career and not being afraid to market them outside of the specific work I do. Because like I have a lot of those skills. I just need to be able to portray them in a way that like I can do more things than just after school or just working in education. And that has kind of taken like a little shift in my own thinking of like these are valuable skills and I just need to be better at marketing them.
So I know that a lot of professionals tend to deal with imposter syndrome, which kind of sounds maybe like what you're describing. So can you kind of go into like your own personal story if you did deal with imposter syndrome and how you got kind of over it?
Yeah, imposter syndrome is real. Like it's like people who have like 20 plus years experience and have, a good education under themselves. Like it's a real feeling of not being good enough and not being uh like kind of doubting your own experience. And I think particularly the last year is like you have to one live in that discomfort for a bit, like understand it and kind of like acknowledge it, but then also like be confident in like you have the experience, you have the education, and if you are either applying for different jobs or applying for like a grad school program or doctoral program, like you may not be the right fit for that job, and that's okay. But there will be, you have to trust in kind of your background and your experience to lead you to the place that you will be the good fit for. And that's not easy. Like, especially if you're interviewing for a lot of different jobs, it can feel like you're not good enough. But for me, the shift is, okay, I wasn't the right fit for that job. I need to find the one that is. And that's not easy.
100%, because it's kind of like it's not only you presenting yourself to the company, it's also kind of the company having to present themselves back to you and make sure that both entities kind of fit each other.
Exactly.
All right, thank you. So now we can open the floor to some Q&A questions from the chat. While we do wait for the questions to come in, there's some questions that I would like to ask you personally, myself as well. So what is one action step that students now can kind of take in their careers to get a head start on this career path?
So I'll say the first thing, as I got closer to graduating from college, I visited the Magner Center, helped me with my resume, which helped me get my job here at Good Shepherd, and really take advantage of the different opportunities that your school offers because like there's a wide variety, and like there's so many people in a bunch of different departments that have like resources and connections, and I think the students that get those opportunities are the ones that actually like talk to people and take advantage of them. Particularly when you're working in different fields, like if you have a recommendation from someone who is respected, like that goes a long way. So really take advantage of all of the different opportunities your school has to offer, even if you feel like I don't need resume help, but it's always good to have someone to have folks look at it, connecting, meeting with people, and just making sure that you're setting yourself up for the best possible success.
I agree. I always think that it's important to have someone objectively look at something that you've done yourself because you can only see so far, past your own kind of habits as well. So there's another question that I would like to ask you. What are some common misconceptions that people have about your industry or your field?
Um, I think really the biggest one is that because it's nonprofit that we don't get paid well. Um, and I will say, depending on the organization that you're working for, that can be true. But I do think it is it provides a decent wage, depending on your specific field track, whether that is a livable wage, that's a whole nother conversation because we're bound by like minimum wage and all that. But I think I have seen people lead really great, decent lives with the salary that they make from working in nonprofit. And, the higher up you go, obviously there's more work and more responsibility, but there's also higher pay. Um, and I think that is often kind of looked at as, because it's nonprofit, you don't get paid well. And that for me, my experience is not necessarily true.
Thank you. And in general, what are some tips for success in your field dealing with children or even just in the nonprofit world in general?
I think in general is being open and willing to learn consistently, whether that is through formal education or like your own kind of professional development in the field is being open to consistently um, participating in professional development opportunities, whether that's internal that your organization offers or externally in other fields. I think that only adds to kind of your portfolio of experience and learning and makes you just a better candidate or a better employee.
Thank you. So we are kind of coming to the conclusion of the session with you. Thank you so much for your time. To wrap up, I'm kind of just inviting you to restate your name, your position, and what you do.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. Julio, my name is Julio Peña III. Pronouns are he, him, or they. I'm a senior division coordinator with Good Shepherd Services supporting after-school programs in Brooklyn and Bronx.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'll also be sharing your links into the chat.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Julio. Thank you for being here today.
Of course. Take care, everyone.
Okay. Okay, so we have our next guest speaker, BC alum, Chelsea Wilson. How are you, Chelsea?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll get started. If you can just introduce yourself and again give us your title and employer that you work for, and we can get started.
Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Chelsea Wilson. I'm currently the Planning and Policy Associate at the Administration for Children's Services, Division of Youth and Family Justice.
Okay. All right. So Chelsea, our first question is, what factors inspired you to select your current career?
So what inspired me to select my current career is that initially I did want to go to law school.
Hmm.
But then after doing an internship where I wanted to have more of like a family work balance, I decided that I was interested in how policies worked and how to implement change. And so that's what kind of inspired me to go into policy and writing policies. Just because I wanted to make a change other than just being a lawyer,
Hmm.
as I would say. And so that's what kind of got me started.
Okay. So that was sort of your passion starting out.
Yes.
Okay. Um, what is an example of a project that that you frequently work on?
So as I said, I'm a policy writer. So a project that I frequently work on is writing policies.
Hmm.
Um, and so I write policies for our juvenile detention facilities. So
Hmm.
what does that entail? It entails actually researching laws and regulations that are applicable to our detention facilities.
Hmm.
It requires coordinating with detention leadership, upper leadership, and also outside agencies to create an effective policy.
So you're dealing with quite a few different venues, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
So what would you say is your skills, sort of your strengths that sort of help you do your job well?
So my strengths are that I'm well organized, because I work on multiple policies at once. I could be working on up to 7 policies at a time. Um, I'm people oriented, so when I meet people, I'm looking to kind of break down that barrier between executive staff and detention leadership,
Hmm.
which has often been an issue because a lot of the times the folks that work in our detention facilities just feel like, oh, this is just another person from executive management that just wants to know like what we're doing. But do they actually like listen to what we're doing, hear our concerns, and try to, write the most effective policy to keep us safe?
Hmm.
And so I believe like being a people like person and just breaking down that barrier with them and letting them know like, hey, I'm not just a person behind the computer that tells them, hey, this is what I feel like writing today. Like, no, I'm with you. I'm in the trenches with you. I want to know what you do. I want to hear your concerns so that we can write the most effective policies for you guys. Because I often lead with, I told them like I want them to come in the same way they leave out. Like I want you to make it to your family's home safe. Like we all have families and we all have life outside of work. And so that is like my main priority. Um, I would also say my writing skills, because a lot of the time I'm just like writing kind of, I would say like 24/7. So I think that's another skill and a great asset of mine that I find very helpful as well.
Hmm. Okay, great. Thank you, Chelsea. What do you enjoy most about your career or your job?
What I enjoy most about my career, my job is actually kind of getting away from the office for a little while and spending like once a week in our detention facilities.
Mm.
Some people may say that's crazy and how do you do it? Just because our detention facilities sometimes are not in the best areas.
Hmm.
But I find that the most enjoyable thing about my career is just because I take a break from my everyday job and I kind of just get to be in a different atmosphere and a different light and something that's a little like lighthearted and just kind of get information to help me write those effective policies and just be around people. Like
Hmm.
that's my number one thing about taking this job and having this passion is that I get to be around people who share the same vision that I do and have the same passion that I do. And so it just makes the job more enjoyable and much easier.
Right. Is that challenging for you to do? To actually, take a day and go to the actual detention center and
I wouldn't say it's challenging. I think what kind of makes people so for me at first when I had to first go in, it was a little scary and daunting just because like
Mhm.
I've never been in a actual detention center.
Mhm.
And so, at first it may seem scary and daunting because it's like, oh, I have to go through a metal detector. Like, you hear those doors close behind you. But then, like, once you're in it, you sort of see, like, these are the same people that are passionate about what you do. Sometimes I even interact with some of the youth in our facilities, and you sort of get to see that these are youth who, just want somebody to listen to them. They
Mhm.
just want to have that support system. And
Mhm.
so it's like if you give them 5 minutes of your time, they're ready to like just pour out their souls to you.
Mhm.
And so I kind of find that enjoyable too because you kind of see it from both perspectives. Like,
Right.
hey, these youth are not that bad. Like they just probably have bad past or made a bad mistake to land them in our facilities, but they'll be okay like once they get out of it.
I mean, I can definitely see the passion in, what you do and why you do it, because how can you write policy for a certain group of individuals if you don't at least, interact with them,
Right.
have a conversation with them. So I appreciate the fact that, you do have that passion to actually go into the actual detention center to gather some of that feedback.
Right.
The next question, describe the type of person that would be a good fit for this career. I guess it's not for everybody, but in your opinion, what would be a what would be a person that'd be a good fit for this particular career?
To start off, I would say policy writing is not for the lighthearted. It really
Mm,
is not. It's a person who has passion for what they do, who love what they do. I would say someone who is organized, who actually likes policy writing, who actually likes like researching, um, because like in order to even write effective policy, I also have to research, regulations to make
mm,
sure they are in compliance with them.
mhm,
I someone that is, quick on their feet, um, ready to engage with different entities and different folks, not afraid to just jump right in,
mhm,
because it is a fast-paced sort of job where it's fast-paced where everybody's just like go, 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 and it's no sometimes it never stops.
mhm.
And so I just say those are some of the qualities that for a policy writer.
Do you feel, Chelsea, that your education, your college education, the experience that you had, did that prepare you for this, or did you sort of gather those type of things in your experiences with internships and taking part in things like that? Do you think school prepared you
So
for it? Yeah.
I would say it's a mixture of both. School definitely
Hmm.
did prepare me for it. So as I said before, with my education in Brooklyn College, I think what definitely stood out to me was not only my political science background, but also the fact that I had a minor in children and youth studies.
Hmm.
Because in a lot of agencies that deal with specifically children and their families, that's the exact like minor or major they're looking for, right?
Hmm.
They want to know that they're getting somebody who understands the dynamics of children and their families because this is definitely a population that we don't take lightly, and there's different facets of it.
Hmm.
And then I did receive my master's in urban policy analysis and management, so that just even propelled me even further in terms of into policy writing because that's when I got like the nuts and bolts of what policy writing was about, even though it may look different in different agencies and different aspects.
Hmm.
And then I would also say like some of my internships really did help me make the decision to come into policy writing. I did an internship with the Office of Children and Family Services, who is our oversight agency. So that definitely gave me a glimpse into like how their juvenile detention facilities work,
Hmm.
and how they handle juveniles
Hmm.
once they come into the system. So I think that definitely really did help me um propel me into the career that I have now. And also writing my whole thesis on Raise the Age before it became Raise the Age, I think really just propelled me even further to say that this was a field that I definitely wanted to get myself into.
Hmm. Great, thank you for sharing that information. And one other thing I wanted to find out from you, Chelsea, the job that you do now, do you work part of a team or is this more individual sort of like uh, pursuit of trying to solve some of these issues through policy?
So that's a great question. I do work on a team. It's a small team.
Hmm.
It's a team of three,
Oh,
for
okay.
right now.
Hmm.
And so primarily we all do a fast day of policy writing just because we manage over 100 plus policies over our two detention facilities. So it definitely would have been a lot for just one person.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of work hand in hand with each other in terms of how we spread ourselves out. So it's like I manage one facility, my colleagues manage the other facility. So that way we have engagement across the board and it's the same level of engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's pretty much like how our work dynamic is, but we're all individually working on different policies and operations orders.
Wow, interesting. Okay, and I guess the last question here would be, what do you know now? Sort of give students some advice. What do you know now you wish you knew earlier?
I guess what I know now, which I knew earlier, is that you may think you want to do one career and then you just end up in a whole different career.
Mm,
And so I think if somebody had told me don't ever limit yourself to just one thing and be like straight focused on one thing, I think that would really have helped me in the beginning. And I think that would have definitely helped me to stay earlier on to say like this is what I wanted to do.
mhm.
Um, versus like waiting till I got to grad school to kind of like figure it out.
Figure it out. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So don't be afraid to step outside the box.
Nope,
Mm,
don't be afraid to ever step outside the box.
hmm
Sometimes stepping out the box is the best thing for some people.
hmm Great. Well, Chelsea, thank you so much for answering those questions. Now we will open the floor
Okay.
to students to post their questions. So
Okay.
just give us a second. Jessica will see
Okay.
what we have.
I'm also going to be putting Chelsea's LinkedIn into the chat while we wait for questions to come in.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting, Chelsea, I'll just ask you one question. How do you stay motivated and productive? It seems like it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of documentation, right? A lot of research. How do you stay
Yes.
motivated?
How I stay motivated is I have a lot of spreadsheets. I have a lot of like organization tools that I use. Like my calendar is definitely like my best friend.
Mhm,
Because that like motivates me to know like, okay, what do I plan for the day? I also like leave room in my calendar for any like um surprises as I like to call it, anything that comes up throughout the day.
mhm,
But definitely what keeps me motivated is knowing that I'm making a difference, even if it's like a small difference. Um, I feel like I'm making a difference. And so even when I'm tired and I'm like, oh, I don't think I can keep going, that's what keeps me going, knowing that
mhm,
I can make a difference, even if it's on a small scale.
mhm. Great.
So we have some
Jessica.
questions in the chat.
Okay.
First two
Okay.
questions come from Natalia. She asks, where do you see yourself in the future? And also, what's the next step in your career?
Oh, that's a good one. So where I see myself in the future is moving up into a more managerial role. So right now I am a policy writer and I also have a little bit of experience as a supervisor and new and up and coming supervisor. So my role is to expand that and kind of go into more of like a senior director of policy. To get more into those spaces of making sure that I do have a seat at the table when issues are being discussed to make sure that everyone has a voice and that everyone's concerns can be heard and that we could just make more changes across the board.
Thank you. Next question comes from Jody Ann, who asks, do you need to have a strong writing background to get into policy writing?
That's a good one. I would say that, for policy writing, when a strong writing background comes with practice, right? So initially, I would say like, you should have some writing skills, and knowing how to write. But when writing policy, that's something you kind of learn on the job. And I say that because every agency and every organization is different in how they write their policies. So I would give you an example. So before I came to the Administration for Children's Services, I worked at the Department of Correction. And so when I was first given a policy, I tailored it to how I learned it in school, right? And when I gave it to my supervisor at the time, he started off with, "This is a good policy and it's well written. This is just not how we write it here." And so he got me in contact with the person who knew the format of the policy and how it's supposed to be written. So I would say with practice, you get better at writing, and you also with practice get better at policy writing.
Thank you, Chelsea. We have one last question from Jennifer in the chat. She asks, what opportunities for advancements are there in this field?
So in this field, the opportunities of advancement would be like you first start off as a policy writer. And then you could definitely climb up if you wish to senior executive director of policy. You could even climb up to senior advisor of policy, a policy advisor, an assistant commissioner of policy. Like there are so many directions that policy writing can take you. It's just a matter of what you want professionally in your career if you decide to go into this field. And that is just so rewarding that it's not just like one particular ladder of advancement. And there's no straight path to advancement, right? I know some people in this field that have gone from like policy writer all the way up to AC. I've known some people who've done like policy writing and gone policy writing to like a senior policy writer. So it's just different aspects, and it's just a matter of what you would like in your career.
Wow, thank you, Chelsea. I mean, that was a wealth of information you shared with us. And I think the students are definitely going to take a lot away from listening to your presentation. And the idea of being a lawyer, that's you're definitely not going there anymore, huh? No.
No, I think that's done. I think I'm done with pretty much school. Now I think I've transitioned into, I feel like I'm now at a place in my career where I'm very happy with what I do. I love what I do.
Mhm.
And so I'm in that place. And then I'm also in a place of mommy. So I'm a mom of two daughters
Oh,
who
wow.
are like 1 and 6. So I don't think,
Yeah,
I
your
think
life is full.
my life has never been a straight path.
Okay, congratulations on that.
Thank
Well,
you.
Chelsea, we'll just ask that you to wrap it up, that you again tell us your name, tell us your title and the employer that you work for, just in case someone might have just come in.
No problem. So I would like to say thank you guys for this opportunity. Again, my name is Chelsea Wilson. I'm the planning and policy writer at the Administration for Children's Services, Division of Youth and Family Justice.
Great. Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you,
Thank you for being
Chelsea.
with us.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, guys, our next and last speaker is Joseph Valerio. And Joseph, how are you today?
Hey,
Can you-
Pam, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay.
Awesome. I'm doing well. I'm here in Washington, D.C. So that's
Oh, wow.
join you
Okay.
guys, especially. It's nice. It's nice to talk to you guys again. And I actually
Yeah.
was recently at Brooklyn College. I saw one of Professor Law's classes and
Oh,
spoke
really?
about
Oh,
being a
okay.
lawyer to them too. So it's always good
Uh-huh.
to see everyone and
Yeah.
talk.
No, students have a lot of great faculty members who are really supportive of their
Yeah.
careers. So
Yeah,
at this
everyone
time,
on this call, you should be very thankful to Pam and the Magner Center folks. They're working incredibly hard.
yeah. And we've had some great presentations today. So here you are. Okay, we're going to give you the last of it. Okay, the last
Sure.
opportunity to share. And we just want you to just introduce yourself, tell us your employer, your title, etc. And then Jessica is going to share some questions with you.
Okay, that's great. So, hi everyone. My name is Joseph Valerio. I'm a general attorney at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. It's a federal government agency that focuses on securities law, so stocks and bonds and things like that, and they regulate the market with respect to that. I graduated Brooklyn College in 2015, went to Georgetown Law School right after, and graduated that in 2018. Before I begin today, I just have to say a quick disclaimer. It's a government mandated one, but the Securities and Exchange Commission disclaims responsibility for any private publication or statement of any SEC employee or commissioner. My discussion today expresses my views and does not necessarily reflect those of the commission, the commissioners, or other members of the staff. So thank you. I'm ready to begin when you are.
Sounds very legal. Okay.
We
Okay.
have to,
Thank
yeah,
you.
we have to do it.
Okay.
All right, so
Jessica, you're on.
jumping right in, our first question is, what factors inspired you to select your current career?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I initially attended Brooklyn College, I picked Brooklyn College specifically because I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a major in education, and I thought a political science or a social studies teacher was my calling. I taught a class briefly during my time at Brooklyn College, and I hated it. Like the students weren't engaged. I realized like I wasn't a great fit for it, but I still had that drive for social justice and political science. And so I started immersing myself in studies from our political science department. And I knew that I wanted to focus on something public service related and maybe in the legal field. I had advisors and mentors at Brooklyn College that helped me find experiences to really pull out and tease that that interest in legal areas. And so through my connections at Brooklyn College and at I had interned for Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. That was through the CUNY Edward T. Rogowski internship program. So I went to DC. I interned for her there. I also came and did an internship for her office here in New York afterwards, building my connections there. And then I also had worked and interned for the Office of the New York State Attorney General in New York through an internship that was provided to me. Or notified to me by my advisor at Brooklyn College. I was also a research assistant for Professor Anna Law during my time at Brooklyn College. And so through all of these experiences, I really was able to hone an interest. I had done some federal government work, some state government work with Professor Law. I had done some immigration law work, and I really liked learning about the law and carrying that forward. So I carried that passion for public service into my law school career. Ultimately, in law school, due to the finances, so law school costs a lot of money. And at Georgetown, there were opportunities to work in private practice. So I started my career at what is known as a big law firm. And I worked there for a couple of years for financial reasons. I just didn't in corporate law for a couple of years. And then the opportunity came around 2 years ago to come back into the government, thankfully. And I was able to come circle around here in the federal government.
So you mentioned kind of jumping around into different sectors of law. For some students that might be interested in working in law, can you kind of explain how that happens? Is it easy to transition from maybe like corporate to more government roles?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, if you had asked me when I had started my career in corporate law, whether I'd circle back, or even if you asked me like in law school, whether I would find myself at a federal agency and, within 3 years of graduating from law school, I'd be like, no, I don't see that happening. But the cool thing about law is I feel like law school teaches you the skills you need to know to become a lawyer. And then at that point, after you graduate, it's up to you to really figure out how to utilize those skills in a way that, best serves your interests or passion. And so you hear stories of people who do corporate law for a couple of years and they really don't like it. And then they're like, well, can I pivot to litigation or can I pivot to regulatory or government law? And it's hard. It's hard to do so, but it's not impossible. I think one of the benefits of being a lawyer is that you're automatically in kind of this network of lawyers and lawyers kind of listen to other lawyers. And so through building connections, through building experience, through exploring your interests in law school and things like that, you can jump from different areas. For me, what helped me land my job at the SEC, I think, was that in law school, I had focused on regulatory and administrative law, which is what I do on my day-to-day here. I hadn't done it as a job when I did my corporate work, but in corporate law, I learned about securities law. And so using my corporate law experience and what I had learned in law school and kind of that policy focus that I had taken with me at Brooklyn College, I think I was able to convince the folks here that I was an asset to the team, but it was my history of experiences that kind of led to that. And I had to give a compelling story for that. So
Mhm.
it's not impossible to jump around from field to field in law. It might be a bit harder, but as long as you have a convincing story, you build the right connections and things like that, it could be feasible.
And just curious, how long have you been practicing law in general?
So I've been practicing since 2018, I think. So 2019, 21, 2, 3. So like a fourth, fifth year now, I think. And in a corporate law, I would be a fifth year associate at this point. But since I jumped off, I've been at the commission here about 2 years. So almost a half a decade as a lawyer.
That's awesome. Thank you. So our next question is, what is an example of a project that you frequently work on?
Yeah. So, as part of my duties in our group at the Office of the General Counsel, I work with a team on a day-to-day, and we provide policy analysis on federal securities laws and those relating to administrative procedures, any other laws that may be applicable to our agency. So we basically the Securities and Exchange Commission, as part of the duties of the office, is we review issues in the market and then we pass rules to help remedy those issues. And these are called proposed and adopted rulemakings. And so as part of my team, I review these rules for legal muster. I work with my team to coordinate with folks in other divisions who are drafting the rule. And then we typically come together to resolve any legal policy issues or any economic analysis issues in these rulemakings. And usually the nice part about this job is that every day involves a new legal question, something we've never seen before. So it kind of requires us to put our heads together and come up with a solution for it in a way that benefits the American public and helps provide for our mission. So it's a very interesting job day to day. My explanation is not giving it justice, but it's definitely a quick on the feet job and a jack of all trades kind of general counsel role.
So to kind of delve a little bit deeper into what you're talking about now, the next question is actually like, what do you actually enjoy the most about this career, and what do you find the most challenging?
So I like the federal government specifically because it allows me to explore complex legal issues in a conducive environment with a team. And the good thing about my team is they allow me to express thoughts or opinions without any fear of judgment. I may have really dumb questions one day where I'm just trying to figure out the basics of a very complex task, but the basics may be something like very easy to understand. It is not a dumb question for my team to answer. They're happy to provide it. The job itself is unique because it requires, and this is any job, by the way, as a general counsel, whether in government or in-house, you're going to get unique issues on a day-to-day basis, as you're basically the counsel for the company or for the administrative agency that you're working for. So you could be in-house at a company like Verizon or something. If you're the GC there, you're going to be managing their legal intake, any legal question that comes in on a day-to-day. It's the same where I am in the administrative capacity. And so the fun part about it and what I enjoy is that on a day-to-day, I work hand in hand with other attorneys to reach solutions to problems we may have never even seen before. And that's really cool. It's really cool to kind of put your head together with other smart folks and brainstorm solutions. So yeah, that's what I enjoy the most. Was there another part to the question as well?
The second part was, what is the most challenging aspect of your job?
Okay, so the most challenging is also the most enjoyable, is that we get areas of law that we may have never seen before. And so one of the skills you'll learn if you go to law school or if you immerse yourself in kind of legal policy is that you learn to research very quickly and you learn to research things that you haven't seen before. And so I may be tasked with solving, a solution to an area of law I haven't seen before. And being a lawyer doesn't, you could study certain topics in law school, but when you're designated a lawyer, it doesn't mean you're an expert in every area of law. So you pick it up on the fly. And I think that's fun. I think it's fun to learn about new areas and new legal issues. They may be head scratchers sometimes, but there's usually always a path forward. And for example, I had worked on a recent proposal and adopting release for cybersecurity rulemaking that requires companies to disclose material cybersecurity incidents to the public if they've experienced one. And for that, I had to immerse myself in what is a cybersecurity breach and, how does it look like in different states or different federal agencies? And so just the questions on a day-to-day can change.
Thank you. Our next question is, describe the type of person that is a good fit for your career.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. Usually, if you ask lawyers this question, you'll find someone that may say, "Oh, it's people who like to read," or it's people who are detail oriented. They're a good fit for law. I've worked with lawyers who hated reading and who hated analyzing, and I worked with those who weren't detail oriented, who kind of just did what precedent had done, but were effective at their jobs, even if they weren't, so specific on the details. And I think after experiencing all of this, I think the best quality lawyer, someone who's a really good fit for this career, is someone who learns how to communicate effectively. And this isn't just for a litigator who has to argue in front of a court or has to convince a jury. That's a job in itself, and that requires very adept communication. It requires you to be convincing and persuasive. Not every lawyer is a litigator. I'm not a litigator, but I still require effective communication on a day to day. When I was at private practice, my communication would be to take a really dense legal concept and distill it down to a client so that they could understand what contracts they were signing, what the provisions of a contract were. That takes skill. It takes skill to read something that's really dense and then to say, hey, this is A, B, and C. It might be 20 pages long, but at the essence, here's what you have to do if you enter this contract. Similarly, in my role now, I get tough legal concepts. I need to communicate them to a team so we can move forward effectively. And so persons who can communicate effectively and efficiently can make it as any type of lawyer. Right? You don't need to be detail oriented. I mean, that's part of it. You do have to read a lot if you go to law school, but if you can communicate complex issues for people to understand, that's your role as a lawyer. You're a client advocate. You're advocating for the company or agency you're working for. And if you master that art of effective communication, you'll be a great lawyer. I mean, that's the essential.
Thank you. And I also know that a lot of the times people have this misconception about being a lawyer that it's kind of more of an independent job. You're kind of on your own, but what you're describing to me is a little bit of the opposite of that. So can I just have your personal experience with like you mentioning how you work with other lawyers to kind of like,
Mhm.
break down an issue if you're not sure, if you're presented with some legal terms that maybe you haven't, experienced while practicing before?
Yeah, so I think it really, I mean, that question depends on whether you're, I'd say a private lawyer in your own capacity. So that's your typical, like if you hear about lawyers locally, it's typically like someone opens their own firm, they're their own lawyer, they take in their own clients. That's a great and fulfilling field if you can make it work. It's hard because it requires a lot of business acumen and business development, but that's doable. But my experience in the law so far has been usually in team-oriented settings. So if you work at a big law firm, you're going to be working with a team of other associates, generally a partner or two on a deal. You might have some senior associates on your team as well. And then if you work in government like I am, you're going to work with a team of attorneys who, you also have supervisors and you have kind of a checks and balances to your work. The nice thing about working with a team is they're a springboard. I find that I'm able to take, my legal theories. Like in my current job, I might be asked a legal question and I can formulate a novel legal theory about how to answer the question. If I was by myself, I would have some idea of whether my legal theory was right based on my research. But it's really comforting to have a team to say, like, hey, I was thinking we can answer the question this way. Do you think the same? And so there's the layer of having a team is nice because it's a springboard. It allows you to kind of check your ideas. It allows people to work together with you. In some legal environments, it may be an impediment, especially if you work at a private firm where there's kind of this dog eat dog mentality. And I could talk to folks about this. Like if folks are interested, message me. But there is, some firms have billable hour requirements. And so when you pit associates against each other in kind of this dog eat dog setting, sometimes the team structure kind of falls apart in some areas just due to this like competition internally. But I generally haven't found that in my practice in both private and government work. I think it's really been collaborative, and it's nice to have other smart, lawyers to bounce ideas off of.
Great.
Thank you. And this is our last question before we open up the floor to some Q&A
Sure.
from the audience. But what do you
Mhm.
know now that you wish you knew earlier?
Yeah, so the number one thing I like to tell students who want to be lawyers and who are in college or in high school and they're kind of weighing the field is I didn't know how many different types of a lawyer there could be. And I think watching popular culture on TV, like Legally Blonde or I don't know, Better Call Saul, or any of these legal shows, you kind of get a taste that every lawyer is a litigator. They're going to have this big stand-up case in court. They're going to have to collect evidence and do discovery, and they're going to have to argue in front of a judge. And I find that many lawyers actually don't do litigation, and there's a whole area of law outside of litigation. And so I tend to tell folks that if they're interested in being a lawyer, or if they're not interested in being a lawyer, if they're intimidated from watching folks argue in court, that's not all that a lawyer is. I mean, you have corporate lawyers, and corporate lawyers spend most of their time editing documents, and they negotiate across the table, and it's usually collaborative. I mean, it's rare that corporate lawyers are adversarial unless there's like a really tough and contentious deal. So you're kind of just like you're reviewing large documents and distilling information down to your clients, and it's more collaborative. And if you're a regulatory lawyer like me or a general counsel, it's more collaborative because you're working for a company or for an agency, and you're working with a team to handle complex legal issues. I've not stepped in a courtroom since I started practice. I did as a law student for observing certain trials and things like that, but I have not stepped in a courtroom since. And I think if I had gone to law school kind of knowing that there were different careers instead of litigation, which everyone focuses on, I think it would have helped me focus on my career a lot sooner when I was in law school. So my advice to anyone who's seeking to go to law school is take a look around, like look at your LinkedIn connections, looked at postings online, get a feel for other areas of law you may be interested in. A lot of firms post their subject matter, so they could do like IP law or corporate law or finance. Just take a look and see what you'd be interested in, and then maybe try and reach out to folks or try to get a day in the life of what they do, because it might not be what you're expecting a traditional lawyer does.
Joseph, I have a
Thank you.
question. What keeps
Mhm.
you motivated and productive? I mean, it seems intense. I mean, I know you like being a part of your team and brainstorming, using sort of as a think tank, but what keeps you motivated and productive in this process?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I had spoken to you guys when I was in private practice a while ago, and I felt like back then I had the need for meditation. Like that was the way I stayed, sane from day to day. It was crazy hours. And so I used to take some time to myself to kind of collect at the end of every day and move forward on the next day. And meditation and refocusing were really helpful. I think now in my job, now what helps me stay focused is I've moved to government. And the benefit about being in a government job is that we are unionized where I am. And so we do have, uh, livable working hours, and I have vacations and things like that, and I'm able to use them and see family and things like that, instead of
Hmm.
kind of the corporate grind. And
Hmm.
that's kept me sane, is the ability to utilize my benefits at my job. I have, I take frequent vacations when I'm able. I check in with my team, but I'm able to see friends and family more. And I think, having time to step away from work, it's not entirely like this quick meditation. It's more like going away for a couple of days and seeing
Hmm.
friends and family. But I think to stay sane in any job, you do need some downtime. I think if you sit there and kind of work the grind, you'll
Hmm.
burn out very quickly. And I know
Hmm.
during COVID, a lot of lawyers burnt out really quickly. I mean, I was one of them on the front lines, and we just got so much work
Hmm.
during that period because folks knew you were working at home.
Right.
And so it's just really important to find time to step away, to do some mental assessments, mental health, self care. I don't knock mental health, self care. I think, it's really needed. And
Hmm.
I stress to everyone, like, just find some outlet that you enjoy, and definitely tap into that every once in a while you're
So
working,
that
because it does
work-life
keep you sane.
balance is very
Yeah,
important.
definitely. Definitely.
Okay. Thank you, Joseph. Okay,
Mm.
Jessica, do we have any questions from the students?
There's no questions in the chat right now,
Okay.
but
Jessica, can I
They're
plug
processing.
one thing?
sure.
So I just wanted to let everyone know that we do have 10-week internship opportunities at the commission. There's separate announcements for undergraduate and graduate students for 3 terms, one in the summer, one in the fall, and one in the spring. We advertise the fall term in the late spring. And if you're interested, follow the Securities and Exchange Commission on social media. or on LinkedIn. And then you could also set up account alerts on usajobs.gov. And there are often internship postings for other agencies on usajobs.gov. So if anyone's interested in federal government internships at the undergraduate level and even at the graduate level, definitely get connected there. And if folks have questions, email me. I'm happy to give you links.
Well, Joseph, is it possible to put the link in the chat?
I'm on my phone, but let me see if I can do it here. I could do it. So, USA Jobs, usajobs.gov. And then if folks have LinkedIn, you're going to want to type this in and follow them. The Securities and Exchange Commission. And it's not just the Securities and Exchange Commission. You might be interested in like food law or communications law. Like I know the FCC and the FDA do internships. So federal government jobs do them. And we're in this interesting hybrid working situation right now. So you might be able to get an internship that allows you to telework instead of coming down to DC, or they might have a satellite office in New York that you can work at. So definitely take a look and keep an alert on to see if there's anything that might interest you.
Joseph, speaking of LinkedIn, would you mind if I shared your LinkedIn to the chat so students can connect with you
Yeah,
if they'd like?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm not seeing any questions from the chat, and we are kind of approaching, well, I stand corrected. There is one question from Jennifer. She asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, it's an interesting question. I think my agency, I mean, I'm really happy where I am in the government. I like my team. I our agency is really big and they have a lot of different divisions. Some people draft rules, some people engage in enforcement matters where, you know, maybe someone's committed a crime, a financial crime, and they bring enforcement matters against them. We have attorneys who argue in front of circuit courts and appellate judges. And so I don't know if I'll be in my group in 5 years. I think I will. But if not, I'm probably going to be here at the commission working in some other capacity. I feel like this is a really nice place to grow. But this does open a lot of doors. So I don't know. It's been really nice. I hope I stay.
Okay.
Thank you. And one last question before we start to wrap up. Jennifer also
Sure.
asked, what can she do to increase her chances for getting a job like this other than internships?
So the number one thing I'll say is well, are you talking about law specifically? Because I mean, if you're doing law, it requires you to go to law school, and that comes with its own challenges that I'm sure the pre-law advisors can tell you about. You have to take the LSAT and things like that. But as far as gearing towards a public service job, I think it's helpful now to just kind of show a commitment to public service, and whether that's volunteering in your local community or if you have the time, and I know this is a really tough ask, but I said before I interned for Senator Gillibrand's office. They're looking for interns always. Like your local officials are always looking for interns to help do constituent phone calls, to help do correspondence and send emails. And even if you do something small like that for a couple of months, it shows that you're dedicated at least to working in some public service facing position. And I think that's really what opened the doors for me was because if I had done just like private positions and throughout college and worked for like funds or whatever, and I had come to the SEC here and said, "Hey, I want to work for you," I don't think it would have shown as much of a commitment in public service and government as me coming from, working with Senator Gillibrand, working at the New York State Attorney General's office. So I think those experiences really helped me create the narrative like, "Hey, I've been dedicated to public service since I went to college. Take me. I'm here again. I've come knocking on the door." So I think it's never too late to build a resume for that, but definitely look for opportunities in your local state and federal communities to see if there's volunteer opportunities available. The downside is they often don't pay, so you kind of have to balance. Am I able to take these on with my workload and with my day to day? And it's unfortunate that a lot of them don't pay, but I think even if you could spare a couple of days a week to go in, and you could put it as a line on your resume, anything helps.
And Jennifer, just to add to what Joseph is saying, is that the internships, they really help groom you for the future career that you're thinking of going into. So it's not just, okay, why am I doing this? It's building on your own, skills, your own character. So internships are extremely important in this process. I really think that's definitely the way to go, to do internships. She has
Okay,
another
so
question. Okay.
she just said thank you so
Okay,
much.
you're welcome.
So thank you, Joseph. Just kind of to conclude, can you please restate your name, your title, and your employer?
Sure. My name is Joseph Valerio. I am a general attorney in the Legal Policy 3 group at the Office of the General Counsel here at the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Joseph.
so much, Joseph. And thank
Thanks,
you
guys.
for
Thanks for having me.
everyone for participating in today's career exploration event. Have a good day.